Welcome back to Grandma Selene. Pull your chairs in close and let the evening settle around us. Pour yourself a glass of something strong, not just for the cold, but to steady your spirit for the truths I am about to reveal. This is Stories with Grandma Selene, and today we are peeling back the heavy velvet curtains of the Garden City. I bring you a tale I call The Altar of Exchange. This is not a story for children, it is a story for the grown. It is for those of you who have lived long enough to know that in the oil-rich streets of Port Harcourt, a man's public reputation is often built on the private bones of the woman he claims to love. It is a story of Evelyn, who mastered the art of looking fortunate while living in a nightmare, and Grace, a woman so blinded by the shimmer of another's life that she didn't realize she was begging to enter a prison. We are going behind the high walls of the GRA, where the mansions are tall but the secrets are deeper than the sea. You will see how a woman who has been pushed to the edge doesn't always scream. Sometimes, she simply steps aside and lets her enemy take her place on the battlefield. But before we enter the gates of this mansion, do me a favor. If you value the wisdom of the elders and the stories that the world tries to hide, hit that subscribe button and turn on your notification bell. Join our circle so you never miss a lesson. Subscribe and give this video a like if you know that not all that glitters is gold, and share it with someone who needs to hear that sometimes the smartest way to win is to let someone else win the prize you no longer want. Now settle in. Let us see how the smartest woman in Port Harcourt planned a silent escape that left the world applauding, and another woman screaming. "You look perfect, Evelyn," he whispers into her ear. But he isn't paying a compliment, he is issuing a decree. In this city of oil and ego, a wife is not a partner, she is a billboard. Tonight her job is to sell the lie that they are the happiest couple in Nigeria. She smiles, a perfect, practiced curve of the lips that never reaches her eyes, because Evelyn knows that in Port Harcourt, a smile is often the only shield a woman has left. The drive home is a masterclass in terror. The moment the heavy, bulletproof door of the SUV clicks shut, the world outside vanishes. The tinted glass cuts off the cheers of the crowd, leaving only the hum of the air conditioner and the suffocating scent of Lazarus's cologne. The man who was just husband of the year evaporates into the humid night air. Lazarus doesn't look at her. He stares straight ahead, his thumb tapping a rhythmic, aggressive beat against the leather armrest. To anyone else it's just a habit. To Evelyn it is a ticking clock. She knows this rhythm. It means she spoke 3 seconds too long to the governor's aide. It means she laughed at a joke she didn't help him tell. "You were loud tonight," he says. His voice is a low, vibrating hum that bypasses the ears and settles right in the marrow of her bones. Evelyn keeps her eyes on the passing streetlights of the GRA, her hands folded primly in her lap. She doesn't defend herself. In this house, an explanation is just more wood for the fire. She simply adjusts her silk shawl, pulling it higher to cover the faint, rectangular mark on her wrist where his heavy gold watch had pressed deep during their grand entrance. The performance for the public is over, but the rehearsal for survival has just begun. She counts the streetlights, praying for the gate to appear, yet dreading the silence that waits behind it. In this SUV, the luxury is just a velvet lining for a coffin that hasn't been buried yet. The mansion stands like a cathedral of cold marble and echoing silence. As they walk through the door, the staff vanishes. The cook, the houseboys, the drivers, they all know the weather of this house better than any meteorologist. They see the set of Lazarus's shoulders and they evaporate into the shadows, leaving Evelyn alone with the man who bought her the world so he could lock her inside it. Lazarus goes to the bar, the clink of ice against crystal sounding like a gunshot in the quiet room. Evelyn doesn't wait for the lecture. She climbs the grand staircase, her heels clicking a lonely rhythm on the stone. Inside the master suite, a room that costs more than most people earn in a lifetime, she stands before her vanity mirror. She unclips the heavy diamond earrings. They are beautiful, yes, but they feel like lead weights designed to keep her head bowed. She wipes away the expensive foundation and there it is, the yellowing smudge on her collarbone, a thumbprint from a conversation they had 3 days ago. She doesn't cry. Tears are a luxury for those who still think someone is coming to save them. Instead, she touches the mark with a strange, clinical detachment. She looks at her reflection and realizes she is no longer a wife. She is an asset being depreciated. She realizes that if she leaves him, he will hunt her down for the sake of his reputation. He would rather see her in a grave than in another man's house. A woman is never more dangerous than when she stops crying and starts calculating. Evelyn looks at her reflection and decides. If Lazarus needs a trophy, she will find him one that is much hungrier than she is. While Evelyn sits in her marble tower, we must look down into the dust of a bare road. There, standing under the scorching Port Harcourt sun, is Grace. Grace is young, she is beautiful in a sharp, hungry way, and she is tired of being poor. She works in a high-end boutique where women like Evelyn spend in an hour what Grace earns in a year. Grace watches the black Range Rovers glide past, their tinted windows reflecting the struggle on her face. She doesn't see the bruises, she only sees the diamonds. She doesn't hear the silence of the SUV, she only hears the purr of the engine. "Why her and not me?" she whispers into her cheap handkerchief. Grace is the kind of woman who believes that happiness is a destination you can reach if you find the right vehicle. She has studied Lazarus from the pages of society magazines. She knows his favourite scotch, his favourite tailor, and the fact that he loves to be seen as a saviour. Grace isn't looking for love, my people, she is looking for a shortcut. She doesn't realise that some shortcuts lead straight into a thicket of thorns. But when a woman is hungry for gold, she loses the ability to smell the rot beneath it. Back at the mansion, there is another soul who sees the truth. Simon, the head gardener, has been tending the hibiscus and the palms for 15 years. He is a man who has mastered the art of being invisible. He moves like a shadow across the lawn, his shears clipping away the dead leaves so the garden always looks perfect, just like the marriage. Simon sees Evelyn standing on the balcony late at night. He sees her flinch when a door slams inside the house. He remembers the girl she was when she first arrived, full of laughter and song. Now she is a statue. One afternoon, while trimming the hedges near the porch, Simon catches her eye. He doesn't say "I'm sorry" or "I know." He simply bows his head and holds out a single, perfect white lily. "The ground is getting too hard for this one, madam," Simon says softly, his voice like dry earth. "Sometimes you have to transplant a flower before the roots turn to stone." Evelyn looks at the old man, and for the first time in years the mask on her face cracks. She realizes she has an ally in the shadows. Simon doesn't want her money, he just wants to see something beautiful survive the storm. Evelyn begins her work. She doesn't use a knife, she uses a mirror. She begins to drop hints to Lazarus about her failing health and her exhaustion from social duties. She makes herself appear dull, tired, and ungrateful. She knows that a man like Lazarus, a man fueled by ego, cannot stand a trophy that has lost its shine. At the same time, she orchestrates the chance meeting. She knows Grace works at the boutique on Tuesday afternoons. She knows Lazarus is looking for a new silk tie for the governor's gala. Evelyn forgets to go with him, claiming a headache. Lazarus walks into that shop alone, his chest puffed out like a peacock, and there is Grace waiting. She doesn't treat him like a husband, she treats him like a god. She flutters her lashes, her fingers lingering on his hand as she shows him the silk. She makes him feel powerful, young, and worshipped. Lazarus looks at Grace and sees a fresh canvas. He doesn't see the hunger in her eyes because his own vanity is too bright. And in the shadows of the mansion, Evelyn sits in a dark room, smiling for the first time in a decade. The exchange has begun. It doesn't take long for the poison to work. Lazarus comes home late, the scent of a different, cheaper perfume clinging to his jacket like a stain. He looks at Evelyn, who is sitting in a plain housecoat, reading a book. He sneers. "You've become so boring, Evelyn," he says, pouring himself a drink. "I met a young woman today, a worker. She has fire in her eyes. She knows how to appreciate a man of my standing. Not like you who sits here like a ghost in my house." Evelyn winces, but deep inside she is cheering. She plays the part of the wounded wife perfectly. She begs him to stay home. She cries real tears, but for her lost years, not for him. The more she clings, the more he revolts. He starts calling Grace openly. He buys Grace a car. He tells himself he is a mentor helping a poor girl, but really he is just building a new cage. He doesn't realize that Evelyn is the one handing him the bricks. To ensure the exchange is permanent, Evelyn does the unthinkable. She invites Grace to the house under the guise of hiring her as a personal shopper. She wants Grace to see the luxury up close. She wants the girl to taste the air of the mansion. Grace arrives, stepping onto the marble floors like she is entering heaven. She touches the velvet curtains, she stares at the gold leaf ceilings. Evelyn leads her through the rooms, complaining the whole time. "Oh, Grace, the maintenance is so high, the security is so stifling, I feel like I can't breathe." Grace looks at Evelyn as if she is insane. "How can you complain about this?" Grace thinks. "You ungrateful woman." Grace decides then and there that she will not just be Lazarus's mistress, she will be the mistress of this house. She looks at Lazarus when he walks into the room, and the look she gives him is one of pure, predatory submission. Lazarus is hooked. He sees a woman who will appreciate his magnificence in a way Evelyn never did. Envy is a funny thing, my people. It makes you want a chair so badly you don't check if the legs are broken. Grace begins to work overtime. She starts accidentally leaving lip gloss in Lazarus's car. She sends him prayers every morning. She positions herself as the woman who will save him from his cold, ungrateful wife. Lazarus begins to see himself as a victim. He tells Grace how Evelyn doesn't understand him. He tells her how lonely it is at the top. Grace sighs and touches his hand, whispering that she would never let a man like him feel lonely. Meanwhile, Simon the gardener is busy. Under Evelyn's direction, he is moving small, valuable items, jewelry that hasn't been insured, stacks of cash hidden in the safe, gold coins, into the garden shed. From there, they are moved to a small apartment in a different part of the city. The mansion is being hollowed out, but it still looks full because the furniture is still there. The cage is being emptied, and the new bird is standing at the door, begging to be let in. One night the storm breaks, not a storm of rain but of rage. Lazarus comes home and finds Evelyn has accidentally deleted an important file from his laptop. It is a small thing, but he uses it as an excuse to let out all his frustration. He screams. He breaks a vase. He raises his hand. Evelyn stands her ground. She doesn't flinch. She looks him in the eye and says, "If I am so terrible, Lazarus, why don't you let me go? Let me take my small things and disappear. You have your grace now. Why keep a ghost?" Lazarus pauses. The ego is a strange beast. He wants to hurt her, but he also wants to be rid of the guilt she represents. He looks at her with pure disgust. "You want to leave? Fine, go back to the gutter I found you in. But don't think you are taking a kobo of my money. You leave with what you brought, which was nothing." Evelyn bows her head. "Thank you, Lazarus," she whispers. She is thanking him for the freedom, not the cruelty, but he is too arrogant to know the difference. The divorce is handled in the dark. Lazarus wants it quick so he can debut Grace at the upcoming oil and gas gala. He pays off the lawyers to make sure Evelyn gets almost nothing in the official papers. He thinks he is winning. He thinks he is leaving her destitute. But Evelyn has been playing a different game. For 2 years, she has been skimming from the household accounts. She has sold her original diamonds and replaced them with high-quality fakes that look identical under the mansion's soft lighting. She has a bank account in her mother's maiden name that Lazarus doesn't know exists. She signs the papers with a trembling hand, acting like a woman whose world has ended. Lazarus signs with a flourish, already imagining the headlines. "Billionaire finds new love." He doesn't realize he has just signed away his only shield. Evelyn was the one who managed the staff, who smoothed over his scandals, who kept his secrets. He thinks he is trading an old model for a new one. He doesn't realize he is trading a veteran soldier for a child. The day Evelyn leaves is a Tuesday. The sun is dull behind the Port Harcourt haze. She packs 2 small suitcases. Lazarus stands at the top of the stairs, Grace by his side, her arm linked through his. Grace is wearing one of Evelyn's old silk robes. She looks triumphant. "Goodbye, Evelyn," Grace says, her voice dripping with fake pity. "I hope you find some peace." Evelyn looks at her, truly looks at her. She sees the young woman's ambition, her greed, and her complete ignorance of the man whose arm she is holding. "I have found it, Grace," Evelyn says quietly. "I truly hope you find yours too." Evelyn walks out the front door. Simon is waiting at the gate. He puts her bags in a modest taxi. He doesn't say a word, but he hands her a small envelope with the address of the house they had prepared. As the taxi pulls away, Evelyn looks back at the mansion. She doesn't see a home. She sees a beautifully decorated altar where she was almost sacrificed. And now there is a new priestess at the altar, unaware that the fire is about to be lit. Grace's first night as the woman of the house is everything she dreamed of. They drink vintage champagne, they dance in the ballroom. Lazarus showers her with promises. He tells her she is his queen. But at 2 a.m. the music stops. Lazarus is tired. He wants his tea. He wants his feet rubbed. He starts to complain about a business deal that went sour. Grace tries to sympathize, but she doesn't know the players. She doesn't know the politics of the Port Harcourt elite. "You're not listening," Lazarus snaps. It is the first time his voice has carried that edge toward her. Grace freezes. She laughs it off, thinking he is just stressed. She goes to the kitchen to get his tea, but she doesn't know where the servant kept the specific honey he likes. She takes too long. When she returns, Lazarus is packing. "Evelyn never made me wait," he mutters. The comparison has begun, and for the first time, a small cold finger of dread touches Grace's heart. The oil and gas gala is the biggest event of the year. Grace has spent weeks preparing. She is wearing the diamonds Evelyn left behind, the fakes. She looks stunning. She walks into the hall on Lazarus's arm, expecting the world to bow. But the elite of Port Harcourt are like vultures. They can smell change in the air. The women who used to respect Evelyn look at Grace with cold, hard eyes. They see a boutique girl who climbed too fast. They whisper behind their fans. Grace tries to join their conversations, but she doesn't have the education or the grace. She makes a joke that falls flat. She mispronounces a French wine. Lazarus sees the smiles of his rivals. He feels the subtle shift in the room. His prestige is tied to his wife's elegance, and Grace is failing the test. He grips her arm hard. "Smile and shut up," he hisses through his own forced grin. Grace's heart sinks. The diamonds feel heavy. The lights feel too bright. She realizes that being the perfect wife is a job and she hasn't been trained for it. They return from the gala in a storm of fury. The moment the SUV door closes, Lazarus erupts. He calls Grace a low-class embarrassment. He tells her she made him look like a fool in front of the governor. Grace tries to fight back. She isn't like Evelyn, she has a temper. "I did my best," she screams. "Maybe if you weren't so demanding." The slap echoes in the car. It is harder than anything Lazarus ever did to Evelyn in the beginning. He has lost his patience. He doesn't have the energy to train another woman. Grace falls against the leather seat, her lip bleeding onto the emerald lace of her dress. She looks at Lazarus and sees the monster in full light. There is no love in his eyes, only the rage of a man whose toy has malfunctioned. Grace realizes then that the Range Rover is just a rolling cage, and she is the one inside it. Back at the mansion, the atmosphere changes. The servants who once had a quiet respect for Evelyn have no such feelings for Grace. They see her as an interloper. They forget to do her laundry. They accidentally burn her favorite dresses. Grace tries to assert her authority. She screams at the cook. She threatens to fire the maids. But she doesn't realize that in a house like this, the staff are the ones who keep the secrets. One morning, she finds a small note tucked under her pillow. It is not a love letter. It is a list of the hospital visits Evelyn made over the last 5 years, neatly documented. Grace's hands shake. She looks at the dates. She looks at the descriptions of accidental falls and flu symptoms. She realizes that she hasn't won a prize. She has inherited a crime scene. She runs to the garden to find Simon, the only one who seems kind. But Simon is gone. He retired the day Evelyn left. The garden is starting to grow wild, the weeds choking the lilies. Lazarus is not just a monster of the hand, he is a monster of the wallet. He realizes that Grace is looking for a way out. He cuts off her credit cards. He tells the boutique she used to work at that she is a thief, ensuring she can never go back. "You have everything you want, don't you?" he asks her over a breakfast she is too terrified to eat. "You have the house, you have the name, now you will play the part." Grace is trapped. She has no money of her own. Her family back home thinks she is a billionaire's wife and keeps asking for remittances. She is too ashamed to tell them the truth. She sits in the golden bathtub and cries until the water turns cold. She looks at the marble walls and realizes they are thick enough to muffle any scream. She thinks of Evelyn and wonders where she is. She realizes now that Evelyn's sadness wasn't weakness, it was the slow death of a soul. Grace begins to see Evelyn everywhere, not literally my people but in the echoes of the house. She finds a hidden drawer with a single earring Evelyn missed. She finds a book with a passage underlined. The wise woman builds her house, but the foolish one tears it down with her own hands. Grace starts to mimic Evelyn. She tries to be quiet, she tries to be perfect, but Lazarus is bored of perfection. He wants someone to break. He starts bringing other women to the house, younger girls, hungrier girls. He does it in front of Grace to humiliate her. "What are you going to do?" he taunts her. "Leave, you have nothing, you are nothing without me." Grace realizes the truth of his words. She traded her freedom for a dream and now she is living a nightmare. She looks in the vanity mirror, the same one Evelyn used, and sees the same ghost looking back. The exchange is complete. The host has changed, but the parasite remains. But Grace is a Port Harcourt girl. She has a bit of fire left in her bones. She decides she won't go down without a fight. She starts to look for the hidden wealth Evelyn must have left behind. She tears up the floorboards in the closet. She searches the safe. She finds nothing. Evelyn was too smart, but she does find one thing, a small burner phone hidden in a vent in the kitchen. There is only one number saved in it. Grace dials it with trembling fingers. A woman's voice answers. It is calm. It is peaceful. It sounds like a woman who is sitting in the sun. "Evelyn," Grace whispers. There is a long pause on the other end. "Grace," Evelyn says, her voice devoid of malice. "I was wondering when you would find that. Have the walls started talking to you yet?" "Help me," Grace sobs into the phone. "He's going to kill me. He's not the man I thought he was." "No," Evelyn says firmly. "He is exactly the man you thought he was. You just thought you were special enough to change him. You thought your beauty was a shield. You were wrong. Beauty is just an invitation for a man like Lazarus to see what he can break. Tell me how you got out, Grace begs. I didn't get out by fighting, Grace. I got out by giving him what he wanted. He wanted you, so I gave you to him. I sacrificed you to save myself. And now you must decide who you are going to sacrifice to save yourself, because in that house there is only room for one survivor. The line goes dead. Grace stares at the phone. The realization hits her like a physical blow. Evelyn didn't lose her husband. She discarded her abuser, and Grace was the garbage collector. Life goes on in Port Harcourt. To the outside world, the new Mrs. Lazarus is a sensation. They appear at the church harvest. They donate millions to the orphanage. Lazarus smiles for the cameras, his arm around a Grace who is now thinner, quieter, and covered in more makeup than a masquerade. The rumors start. People say Grace is sickly. They say she has lost her spark. But no one moves to help. In the high society circles of the Garden City, people mind the business that pays them. As long as the champagne flows at Lazarus's parties, no one cares if the hostess has a broken rib under her silk bodice. Grace looks at the women in the crowd, the same ones who envied Evelyn, and she sees the cycle. She sees the young girls looking at her with the same hunger she once had. She realizes that the altar of exchange is always looking for a new victim. The end comes not with a bang but with a breakdown. During a dinner party for some international investors, Grace snaps. Lazarus makes a joke at her expense, a cruel comment about her upbringing. Grace doesn't stay silent. She stands up and pours a tureen of hot soup into his lap. The room goes silent. The investors look away in embarrassment. Lazarus's face turns a shade of purple that no one has ever seen before. He doesn't hit her there. He smiles. He apologizes to his guests. He leads Grace upstairs by the arm, his grip so tight the bone nearly snaps. You shouldn't have done that, Grace, he whispers. Now the world knows you're broken, and I don't keep broken things. Lazarus doesn't kill her. That would be too messy. Instead, he does something worse. He has her committed to a private wellness center, a place for the wives of the wealthy who lose their minds. He tells the world she had a nervous breakdown. He tells her family she has gone abroad for treatment. He wipes her from his life as easily as one wipes dust from a shoe. Grace sits in a white room with barred windows. She has no jewelry, she has no silk. She has only the memory of the boutique and the sun on a bar road. She realizes that Evelyn was right. The only way to win was not to play. She had chased the crown, and it had turned into a crown of thorns. In a small town near the coast, far from the oil soot of Port Harcourt, a woman named Amaka runs a small, thriving bakery. She is a woman who laughs often. She is a woman who sleeps through the night. Beside her, an old man named Simon tends the small garden out front, growing lilies that no one is allowed to pick. Evelyn has no diamonds, she has no Range Rover, but when she walks down the street she doesn't check her reflection for bruises. She checks it to see if her hair is straight. She is free. She knows that somewhere in the city Lazarus is already looking for his next project. She knows there is another Grace waiting in the wings, but that is no longer her story. The moral of this tale is simple yet heavy. Do not let your hunger for another person's harvest blind you to the seeds they had to sow to get it. We live in a world where we covet the crown without asking if it is made of gold or of thorns. Grace looked at Evelyn's life and saw a destination. She didn't realize it was a crime scene. She was so busy trying to steal a seat at the table that she didn't notice the table was set for a sacrifice. Remember this, not every answered prayer is a blessing, and sometimes the greatest mercy the heavens can show you is to deny you the life you think you want. In the streets of Port Harcourt, and indeed in your own lives, be careful of the shortcuts to wealth. If you take a seat that someone else was desperate to leave, do not be surprised when you find the seat is still hot from the fire. Build your own humble house with peace, for it is better to eat bitter leaf in freedom than to choke on honey in a cage. Envy is the only bird that flies into a trap, even when the door is wide open.